Prynhawn da pawb. Good afternoon, everybody. You're very welcome, as always, to this meeting of the Digital Inclusion Alliance for Wales Network. I'm Hamish Lane, your chair. And as always, we're really grateful that you've given up the time this afternoon, because we know how busy you are. But I think you will find, as always, that the time is well spent. We have a really interesting session planned for you this afternoon. And just by way of introduction, just the first thing to say is we're recording the session, so hopefully that's okay. That's so that we can share it with people, members who haven't been able to get here this afternoon. By way of introduction, as you will probably know, the Digital Inclusion Alliance for Wales was established as part of the contract for the Digital Community Wales programme from Welsh Government. We've been a part of that, and we were part of the successful, well, it was Wales Co-op Centre and then Cwmpas tender for that. That contract, as you probably know, is up for renewal at the moment. And in fact, the invitation to tender has actually been published very recently. So we're in a slight state of flux in terms of the alliance, but I can tell you in a very positive way that the tender or the invitation to tender that Welsh Government have published includes the idea that there should be an alliance, albeit possibly with a slightly different focus, but very similar. So I can't tell you quite what the outcome is going to be, but what I can tell you is, therefore, because that contract the current contract comes to an end at the end of September, we will organise our another meeting of the network, our next meeting, which will be before the end of September, by which time we can have a chance to celebrate what we've already achieved and be much clearer, I hope, about the role of the Alliance, and more importantly, its members, you, will play in the future digital community, or at least the future digital inclusion plan for Welsh Government. So that's just to set the scene. But today's meeting is just another one of our usual meetings. We have had two members of the steering group. Your steering group have stood down for various reasons, not related to what I've just said. Ellen Williams from Disability Wales and Alison Pritchard from WCVA. We would normally have gone out to recruit two more people to the steering group, but because of this state of flux that we're in at the moment, we thought it was sensible just to leave things as they are for now. Very grateful for everything that Ellen and Alison have done, and to kind of make a decision about the shape of any future steering group and who should be on it when we're a bit clearer about what's happening with the Alliance. So that's just a bit of kind of preamble. Today we're focusing on our first priority one, which is embedding digital inclusion across all sectors. And we made this our first priority, not necessarily our top priority, but our first priority, because it was so important, we thought, to send the message to people about digital inclusion that this is something that is affecting everybody in all walks of life, and therefore every sector should be playing a role in digital inclusion. And so it's really nice to be able to revisit that priority today, and to build on work already done to raise awareness of how digital inclusion contributes to the 7 national wellbeing goals for Wales. And at an event on May the 12th in Welsh Government, there was an opportunity to hear about the minimum digital living standard, and colleagues in Welsh Government and colleagues from the MDLS work made the link directly between the minimum digital living standard, digital inclusion, and the well-being of our future generations. And so it's a genuinely enormous pleasure to welcome Derek Walker, who is the current Future Generations Commissioner, but as many of you will know, was previously at Wales Co-op Centre, now Cwmpas. Derek, I think you're going to kindly talk to us a little bit about the role of kind of digital inclusion in the well-being of future generations. So if I may, I'll hand over to you. I think Derek, you're sorry, just to say that Derek's going to talk for a little bit, and then there will be an opportunity for a few questions to Derek, and then I think you have to leave us at 2 o'clock. Is that right, Derek?
Yeah, that's right. Diolch yn fawr, Hamish, and prynhawn da pawb. Good to see everyone and good to see some familiar faces and some previous colleagues. So thank you for inviting me to say a few words to you today. Clearly, because of my past role at Compass at Wales Co-op Centre, you know, the importance of digital inclusion and the need for all of us to focus on digital inclusion for a fairer, more equal Wales is something that's very important to me, and I, recognise its importance and understand it, I guess, from previous the previous roles that I've held. It's very good to see this alliance as it seems to have grown a lot since I last attended the meeting. So lovely to see that the alliance is in such good shape and with such a broad membership. So wonderful to see that, and thank you for all coming along to be part of this conversation. I very much welcome if it was more of a conversation, I guess, than a presentation from me, because I think we could probably have a richer conversation in that way. But I'll make some introductory remarks and hoping that will be helpful. Um, so, as you will know, my job is as Future Generations Commissioner, and that is independent of government. And my job is to support the public sector to deliver on the aspirations of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. So it's not my job to do it. I'm there to advise, scrutinise performance, and investigate if I'm not satisfied with that performance. So we have this collective vision for our country through the seven wellbeing goals, and all of our public sector organisations are obliged to deliver against those goals, that ambition, set out plans through their well-being plans and their well-being objectives to deliver on that collective ambition. And digital inclusion is at the heart of this. So we measure our progress collectively, and that's our national scorecard, which I don't think gets enough attention in terms of understanding how well we're doing as a country. We've got our seven goals, we've got our 50 indicators, one of which, number 50, is around digital inclusion. That should shape the plans our public sector organisations put in place, and the indicators and what they tell us tells us whether we're doing a good job or not, or whether we need to change course. And so, my job is to push public bodies and to advise them on that delivery. And at the moment, it's true to say that not enough alignment is taking place. Not enough alignment is we're not seeing enough alignment between the public body plans with those collective goals, all seven of them. They're not there to pick and mix, but all seven goals, and then showing the progress that these plans are making against the indicators. And so, as digital inclusion is at the heart of that agenda, the framework, the processes and the structures that we have as a result of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act should be used as an important vehicle for delivering on digital inclusion. I'm be good to have a conversation about how well you think that is going or not, because if those are our goals and these are our measures, then the plan should be aligned, as I say, to those goals and measures. And for those that are passionate and expert in delivering initiatives that deliver to improve inclusion, digital inclusion in Wales, then we should be seeing our well-being plans from the PSBs and the well-being objectives from our 56 public bodies reflecting that. So how well are they including digital inclusion programs in those plans and those objectives? Because that is very much a vehicle which we can be using to perhaps bring more people and organizations on board to deliver digital inclusion and to move us forward. I was One of the things that I'd love a conversation about is, you know, where we've got in terms of the indicator. If I just had a quick look actually this morning online to see where we were in terms of the digital inclusion indicator number 50, and there isn't any information there in terms of our current position. So I know this is being looked at in terms of the minimum living digital standard. Sorry, I've got that the wrong way around. But you know that's so important that we get that right, because that tells us, you know, where we are and what we've got to do, and so we need to really shape that and make sure that what that tells us is used by me and others to inform public bodies in terms of their plans for well-being and how they incorporate digital inclusion activities as part of those plans. The work that I've been doing recently has been around something called the Future Generations Report. So every 5 years, the commissioner gets to produce a report reflecting on the past and looking forward to the future. And that is called the Future Generations Report. And I launched it at 10 years of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, the date of 10 years at the end of April. And so that's framing the work that I do for the next few years. I've got 5 years left in the post. But what you see from that analysis of the national indicators and what you see from the other statistics and information that we were able to gather is that, you know, we can point to some really good progress in all sorts of areas, whether it's, you know, digital inclusion or it's transport or it's net zero, but we still have a long way to go to be delivering against the long-term goals that we have for the country. So we're really not on track in terms of many of our health trends, for example. We're not on track in terms of restoring nature. We're not on track on some of our climate initiatives. So there is an urgency for us to focus on the long term, on the vision that we've set for the country, and on aligning to our collective vision. And digital inclusion is very much at the heart of this vision. It sits there as something that we've set ourselves as something we want to improve upon for current and future generations, and it has to be at the part of the plans that we put in place. So I'd be very interested, as I say, to know how well integrated digital inclusion is in these plans and what more I can do with you to ensure digital inclusion features more prominently in part of well-being plans and objectives of the public bodies. So I'll perhaps pause there, Hamish, to answer any questions or take part in any discussion that you wanted to have. But do take from me that I'm very keen to work with all of you to support you, because our work is so aligned. My work in supporting public bodies to deliver against the goals and improve against the indicators is so aligned to your work, given that digital inclusion is one of the indicators, and digital inclusion is aligned to three of the goals as part of those indicators. It's so fundamental to our collective success for the future. So I'll pause there. Thank you. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you very much indeed. And so I would encourage network members to pop your hand up if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment about what Derek said. Perhaps while you're just thinking about that, Derek, a question from me, I guess, which is who owns and defines the digital inclusion measure, and do we think it's measuring the right thing, even if it doesn't have any data in it currently? Is it intended to? And then I suppose the second question is, again, this is as a technical question, but your scope, you talk about public sector bodies. So does that extend, to example, to all the arm's length body of government? So things like the National Library and Gallery of Wales and those sort of things, or is it just local authorities, health, more narrowly defined?
Yeah, so if I take the second question first, it's broadly covering all 56 devolved public bodies. So that includes Amgueddfa Cymru and the National Library and the national parks and NRW and others that are not local authorities and health boards. But on that point, and I guess in line with this, the thrust of the Digital Inclusion Alliance work, we're not going to meet our goals if we just focus on public bodies, if we don't involve the private sector and the voluntary sector and citizens in that national mission, because the public sector don't have the resources or the capability to deliver on it on its own. So I suspect it's because of devolution. Perhaps if devolution had been differently, Welsh Government at the time might have sought to apply um, the Wellbeing Act more broadly. And it's very good when you see private sector, third sector organisations recognising their role in delivering on our national missions through the wellbeing goals. But in formal terms, it applies to 56 public bodies, Transport for Wales being another one. So they're all obliged to put plans in place to show how they're delivering on the goals. And so on the first point, the formal responsibility for setting the indicators and how that's measured sits with Welsh Government. And I don't know if DIU are on the call, probably are. So, it's there, the indicators would be set in collaboration, in consultation with key stakeholders, and but led by Welsh Government. The digital inclusion indicator only came in the last few years. It's one of the latest to be added, and I resist. It's not my role to decide or not to decide, but there are always calls for tweaks and so forth to the indicators. And my sense is we should look at these, every 5 years or something, not do them, one year and one the next, because we keep moving the goalposts if we keep doing that. So we need to sort of have, they're not perfect by any chance, but we need to have some way or framework of measuring our success, and the ones we've got are a pretty good way of doing so.
Thank you. I was just quickly looking to see if we have anyone from DIU, but perhaps Joe, if we do, it would be great to hear from you. If Joe, otherwise Joe Lovell, have you been involved or engaged with about the setting of the measure? See, Joe's there, or indeed anyone from DCW. I know the Chief Digital Officer for Welsh Government, Glyn Jones, was thinking about a measure, and I think there is a hope that that the minimum digital living standard might be able to form part of that, because it obviously it has the potential.
Sorry, Hamish, I was having technical difficulties getting off mute.
Yeah, great. That's difficulty.
Good. So I guess two parts to that answer. The first one, I guess that DIU might not be on the call today, given that the tender is now live, and given that we currently deliver the programme. I think they're probably not going to engage with the Alliance on the grounds of that. I could be wrong. I'm just making an assumption, but I think that's probably why they wouldn't be here today. In terms of the questions that were put forward for the wellbeing goals, they came from so we weren't involved in writing of those at all. As far as I'm aware, it was just Welsh Government that wrote the questions and put forward. So we know there's a new set of questions based around the minimum digital living standard that will be used in the new national survey for Wales. We haven't seen those questions, but we know they're there, and they're the questions that then link, as far as I'm aware, to the wellbeing indicators, if I'm right, Derek. I'm looking back to you now.
I actually don't know that, but that sounds logical. That would make sense. But we do need them to get that done, because if we haven't got an indicator that's able to measure our progress, then that's clearly an issue. But that does make sense, Joe, and that sounds like a sensible way of doing it to me.
Yeah, because up until now, it's been more around, the question's been about the percentage of the population that are digitally excluded. I know Welsh Government wanted to try and tie that back into, a better approach that gave you more meaningful data in those responses, and linking it to the MDLS made sense. So I know questions were prepared, but there's been delays or there was something with the contract not starting. So I think it's next year or 2026. I think we're expecting the first national survey for Wales results to come out, which will then have that new question in there.
Excellent. That's good. So I'm looking to colleagues from all our member organisations, and it's great to have nearly 50 of you on the call. Obviously, many of you are from third sector, charitable sector, voluntary sector organisations. I'd be interested to know whether, if either way, actually, whether you're kind of using the wellbeing goals, whether you are kind of linking your work on digital inclusion, kind of referencing the wellbeing goals, or whether you're just doing digital inclusion work and it's unlinked. And I'm sure Derek would probably like to know that too. So is there anyone from one of the organisations who could just share with us what you do? Do you do it in isolation or do you do it? Ashley?
Yeah, so we obviously try to meet the 7 goals. So we're using kind of measures through the development of our Insight app and how that's kind of meeting the 7 goals for the people we're working with. So we know that digital's intertwined into all areas. There was a kind of question I was going to ask Derek around whether at some point there was a possibility of having an 8th goal, which had a primary focus on digital itself. But I understand that the 7 already exist and digital kind of interlinks to all of them. But I kind of, that's a big ask. I suppose you'd have to go for legislation and the Senate would have to vote to actually add an additional goal as well.
That's the first time I've heard reference to that. Yeah, they wouldn't, because it's in legislation, it wouldn't be easily achieved by adding another goal. And one of the things I've called for in the report I mentioned, the Future Generations report, and the Auditor General did the same actually, is a post-legislative review of the legislation 10 years on, because there are certainly things I think we could change with the legislation to improve on it. I think it's been really important legislation, made a big impact, but it's not perfect. And 10 years on, what would we change if we were starting again? The other thing that might play a role in reviewing all of this is that when we put together the 7 wellbeing goals back in 2015, it was the same time as the UN agreed the Sustainable Development Goals at the UN level. So it was Wales's version. We were the only country in the world, or one of the only countries in the world, to legislate for the Sustainable Development Goals. So it was our way of interpreting the 17 SDGs. And so at 2030, we understand the UN will look again because that's when they run out. We'll look again to see whether they carry on with the SDGs or whether they do something else or that they alter them in some way. And so that would be an opportunity also for us to sort of review our approach, whether we needed to change them or broaden them or what. But there would be no plans to do that without a commitment from Welsh Government to review the legislation. At the moment, there isn't that commitment, so we'll see what happens after the Senedd elections. But there is a Senedd inquiry going on at the moment. They've got their first oral evidence session today from the Equality Social Justice Committee, and they're carrying out their own inquiry into the legislation. So whatever they come up with will potentially inform a future government, should the future government want to take that report into account. So this is the first time we've had such an in-depth inquiry into the legislation. So I think the deadline for formal submissions of written evidence has passed, but they may be willing to accept views after that date. But yeah, there's nothing on the cards at the moment, Ashley.
Thanks very much. And I perhaps should have said, I was going to call in Kevin now. It would just help for Kevin if just say the organisation you're from, just in case Derek doesn't know.
Yeah, so I work for Anti-Cymru, previously known as Anti-Tavy. I was just going to say that when thinking about the 7 well-being goals, you mentioned that we're making varied progress in certain areas. I think it's worthwhile noting that the more digitally inclusive we become as a nation, that might have an impact in terms of climate change and other indicators, because I was just checking on Google. For every search on Google, it creates 0.2 grams of CO2, and there are 3.5 billion searches a day. So, huge amounts of energy are created by digital activity. So when we make gains in one area, we may have to make corresponding changes in terms of green energy usage and those other indicators. So I think a lot of these indicators are interlinked in terms of, when we make progress in one area, we need to think of the mitigating actions we need to take on other indicators as well. So I just wanted to mention that because when we do work and we respond to tenders, we usually reference the 7 wellbeing goals, and we're usually assessed on how we're making progress with those. So I think as a nation, we've got some work to do to understand how complex all of this is and how interlinked everything is. Sorry if I've taken too long.
No, that's a very good point, Kevin. What I might just do, though, because Derek's time is precious, so Elisa, can we perhaps have your question, and then Derek could deal with both of them at the same time?
Yeah, we've actually worked with the minimum digital living standards as a pilot. So
just say, are you from iConnect?
iConnect, yes. We're from Monmouthshire Housing Association, so we was very lucky to be involved with the pilot. With the pilot, well, we went through older schemes as well as people on UC and other areas. We had like a broad scale. But what we've kind of done now that are finished and we've had some good reports, we work with Advice Pro. So we've built in, instead of on the initial meeting, any referrals that come through to ourselves, we ask the questions beforehand now, and it's built into our programme. So it just gives us, when we report in them, we can kind of actually have a better scale of what is the problems around the area, what we've kind of targeted. So hopefully the next quarter now we'll see another result of what is actually, if it's more health, if it's more UC problems financially, and able to buy digital equipment and things like that. So that is hopefully going to, benefit ourselves with the minimum digital living standards going forward.
Thank you, Elisa. Derek, a quick question, reply to those 2 good points.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's very helpful, Elisa, because the more sort of data we can collect and understand how well we're doing, the more we can understand, what the issues are and where we should direct resources. And this is also about holding us all to account for things that make a difference. One of the themes of my report was, public services are so stretched, and there are so many different demands. We can't carry on with partnership structures or activities that are not making an impact. So we need to understand what is making an impact, and that can help with that prioritization. So it's good to know, how you're doing that and how useful that can be. And Kevin, in terms of your point, I guess that you've hit the nail on the head. That's really the whole point of the Wellbeing Act, and the reason why we have 50 indicators is because all of us, whether we're working on digital inclusion or we're working on housing or whether we're working on, transport, have to understand the connections to other agendas. It's not acceptable for us to just plow on in our own area and ignore the impacts and the wider implications across other areas. We have to understand, what we're doing and how it affects, all of the goals and all and the other indicators, and how we collaborate with others to, take the decisions, understand the compromises, how, take the mitigating action to understand what we need to do to prevent or mitigate the issues that it might be causing further down the line. Too often I think we're still in this silo mentality, just looking at one goal, looking at our own area. We've got to look collectively, and that's what I'm trying to do all the time. You gave that example. Forgive me, I'll give an example that I brought up with Transport for Wales the other day. Transport for Wales doing great stuff. Good to see the increase in people using public transport. We know it's not where we need it to be, but it's important, isn't it, for a more sustainable transport system? But if you get on a train and all you can buy is a Mars bar and a can of Coke, that's not helping our food system and help us to be, a healthier country. So them understanding their implications of, their decision there, which might be a commercial one, on the wider indicators that we have around health, and our national plans around food is really important. So it's absolutely making the connections in all that we do. And I'm really glad to hear, Kevin, that you're being asked to justify, if you're putting a bid in, how it's delivering against the well-being goals, because that's what it should be about. If a body, Compass or Antia Cymru or whoever it might be, is delivering a public contract and lucky enough to have public resources to do so and has done a good bid, then we need to understand the wider role that you can play in helping Wales meet its wider objectives. So it's really good to see that happening, and hopefully that gets significant attention during the scoring process. So nice to see you again, Kevin. I think we have met before, but it's nice to see you. Yeah.
Derek, I'm conscious that we've kept you over the time you had, so we're really grateful. Thank you so much. If it would be helpful and all right, we'll share your report with the whole of the network so that everybody's had a chance to see it if they haven't already, because it sounds like it has really important information in it for us all. It's great to hear that digital inclusion is on your agenda, and I'm sure you'll be doing everything you can to help keep it a priority. One of the things that we are particularly trying to say to colleagues in Welsh Government is it has to be pan Welsh Government as well. It can't just be the digital inclusion unit. It's got to be every part of government in the same way that it has to be every part of society, really. So thank you very much indeed for your time and coming to talk to us, and we hope whichever alliance there is going in a couple of years' time, we might get you back and you can tell us how we're getting on, which would be great.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I'll put a link in the chat to the report before I go. And yeah, please do contact myself and my office if we can be helpful, because this is very aligned to the priorities that I have and very keen to support your success. So diolch yn fawr. Thank you, Hamish.
Thank you very much, Derek. Good. So a great treat to have had a chance to have a one-to-one with Derek, and I would really encourage you to have a look at the report he's going to share, and perhaps Sarah, we just make sure it gets out to everybody who isn't here as well. So Derek talked a little bit. It mentioned housing, and housing is a really important sector, particularly social housing, and we're very pleased, therefore, to hear from Lon Moseley, who's from Digital Communities Wales, and who's going to talk to us a little bit about some of the work that's going on in the housing sector with respect to digital inclusion. And then, again, she's kindly going to take some questions at the end. So, Lon, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. If you give me 2 seconds, I'll share my screen. Make sure that I've got the sound sharing. That's one thing I've got to remember. Right. So can everybody see that?
Yeah.
You can see that? Brilliant. Okay, so prynawn da, pawb. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Lon Moseley. I'm a digital inclusion advisor with Compass, working on Digital Communities Wales. So I've been asked to come and discuss Cymru with you and how bringing the housing sector together to embed digital inclusion can actually work in practice. So I've been supporting the work of Cymru since its beginning back in 2022. So, oh, my computer's just having a bit of a moment. Go. So some of you may never have heard of Cymru or what exactly it is. So the idea originally came from Scott Tandy at Newydd Housing. I'm sure everyone in this room knows who Scott is. And he wanted to create a Wales-wide housing portal for all tenants, regardless of who the landlord was, so they could be able to access online sessions, and the landlords could then share the workload of their tenant support, digital inclusion, and tenant engagement. And when it originally started, it was just Newydd Housing and Group Cynefin. So the tenants were offered a chance to name this brand new housing portal, and that's when it became Cymru. So it has now grown to be a partnership of 19 registered social landlords all throughout Wales. They're all pooling their resources together and offering their tenants more activities online and support digital inclusion in a more cooperative way. So Air Cymru actually offers 3 kinds of session on their website. You have the on-demand sessions, which are recordings of maybe previous events or activities or things that they can watch at any time. They have events, which are live events people have to register for and turn up at a specific time for. And then they also have courses that follow a more formal learning pathway. So the sessions range from virtual bingo, cook-alongs, mindfulness, exercise classes, all the way up to Open Learn courses from the Open University. Open Learn became a third-party provider for Air Cymru, and some of their sessions are actually directly on the site. So all of these sessions are free for the tenant. The tenant doesn't have to pay a penny to access these sessions. Air Cymru is a prime example of how we can bring people together and cooperate to co-produce services and resources. So an example of this is the co-production of the Tenancy Ready course, and that is available on Air Cymru for member tenants. So this course was co-produced by all the members for all new tenants. It's to help them understand the key changes that came into force when the Renting Homes of Wales Act 2016 came into play in December 22. And it can prepare people for the new homes and, you know, things that they need to know, where the stop tap is and all that kind of stuff. But all social landlords must offer this training in one way or another. So it just made complete sense that they worked together and offered it on the site. So this next slide, okay, this is a very, very short video. This is the tenants of Grŵp Cynefin, I believe it was in Awel y Dyffryn in Denbigh, watching the Barry Male Voice Choir perform live at a Newydd Housing Association kind of concert for their tenants back in December 22. This was the first ever event they did under the Air Cymru banner, and it was actually before the website had gone live. So let's hope this is going to work. So as you can see, it was quite simply live streaming an event for other people in other supported housing schemes to be able to watch it. So what is the benefit of actually working this way? Well, for the landlords, it reduces duplication of activities. It allows them to share knowledge and experience. For instance, recently they've developed bilingual digital inclusion cards in partnership with Jangala. So they're now available to use by all the members to work one-to-one with people in their community. It identifies gaps in service, as well as potential ways to plug that service together. It gives them a shared budget. All of the members pay into a central pot, which allows them to trial activities or sessions that would have never been feasible individually. And then for the tenants, it can help them stay connected. They can gain access to more resources. It has shown to have a positive impact on their health and well-being, and then allows them to have a better understanding of the housing sector. From recent figures, it shows that they've had increased tenant engagement, increased digital skills and confidence, and it could actually be an universal solution for all housing tenants in Wales. So how exactly does it help the tenants? Because it combines in-person and virtual events, it allows people who would never have been able to attend the event in person, let's say due to an illness or a disability, or for whatever reason they can't leave their home, they can actually still attend these events from their home. But that is also vice versa as well. If someone doesn't want to stay at home or they don't want to access it online, they can go to the communal areas and access it as a group. Because of that, then it can combat loneliness and isolation. It gives them access to more activities while actually putting less pressure on the resources and the staff, which can actually open their time up to support more people. So it builds confidence and allows their staff to have more time to support people directly. And it also actually increases the Welsh language provision. So we've seen that previously the Welsh language provision were dependent on if that member of staff could speak Welsh. And if they didn't, there was no Welsh language provision if the tenant wanted it or not. But then with this, it allows landlords that do require staff members to be able to speak Welsh. And 2 examples of that is Grŵp Cynefin and Adra, for instance. They can actually concentrate on running Welsh language sessions, while the other housing associations or landlords can concentrate on running the English ones. So then it gives more access to Welsh language sessions. It also just removes geography as a barrier. If you live in rural Gwynedd and want to access an AI session that's going on by a housing association in Cardiff, you can. There's no transport issues or anything, you can do it. And all tenants have the opportunity to suggest activities or events or courses, and they have then ability to provide feedback at the end of every session as well. That then allows the partnership to identify what's needed, what people would like, and actually what hasn't gone that well, what's going great, and work together to fix it. So even though Air Cymru sessions are online, it has actually enabled new partnerships to develop locally, and then that can support people in person with their digital skills. So this is another very short video of the partnership on Ynys Môn called Digidol ar y Cyd. I'm really sorry, you're going to have to hear my voice again in this video, okay? But it just shows a partnership between the landlords that have property in Holyhead working together and offering weekly digital inclusion sessions for their tenants in the library. But the big point of this is each landlord only had to send their staff member twice in 6 weeks, but their tenants had access to someone to support them every week. And they also managed to grab a couple of volunteers to join and support as well.
Hiya, I'm Lon Moseley. I'm a digital inclusion advisor with Digital Communities Wales, and today I'm here at Holyhead Library to see some fantastic work a new partnership that we've been supporting are doing and have a sneak peek at one of their tea cake and technology sessions.
Digidol ar y Cyd is a partnership between registered social landlords, Tai Môn, Grŵp Cynefin, Clwyd and the Anglesey Libraries. They run weekly volunteer-led digital support for tenants and the wider community of Holyhead called Tea Cake and Technology. All the staff and volunteers who support these sessions have received our Digital Champions training.
Hi, my name's Stacey. I'm the Digital and Financial Inclusion Officer for Anglesey Council. I've come along today to work with other agencies to support people with their digital skills.
The session starts with a volunteer discussing a particular topic. Today was the pros and cons of online accounts. After a cup of tea and a cake, they can choose what specific help they need and go to different areas with different staff members. Today's options were online messaging and calling, listening to music and podcasts, paying their bills, or general device support.
Da chi wedi gweld hwn yn ddefnyddiol?
Am 2 awr, ond dyma beth ni wedi ddysgu werthfawr iawn.
Working in collaboration has been beneficial to the organisations involved and the attendees. They can now support more people on more topics with the exact same resources. and it is now a fantastic place people can turn for digital support within their own community.
So as you can see there, it just showed that they could run those sessions weekly and have less staff in each one. So if we have a look now at the tenant engagements, so these leaflets were produced jointly and shared between the teams. They are actually given directly to their tenants or used while they support their tenants to register or to log in, but they're also in their communal areas. They're always mentioned in the landlord's newsletter that goes out. And if there is something particular on that they think, or they know their tenants, oh, Mrs. Jones is going to enjoy that, they will literally knock on their door and go, look, I think you'll enjoy this, and invite them along. They also send out Air Cymru, I'm sorry, sends out newsletter to every member once a month to let them know what's coming on in the next few weeks. And they've got a priority now for the next year, 25-26, to increase tenant awareness and to get more sign-ups. So what happens if the tenant does not have a device or data? How do they get on Air Cymru? Well, some of the landlords actually have their own device loan scheme. So they utilise that, but some also have local ones, for example, within libraries. So they are used as well. We encourage all the members to become digital inclusion hubs so they can actually access the Good Things Foundation data and device bank. They've provided access to Air Cymru in most common areas in schemes if they can, especially if they want to attend with a friend or as a group. And the Jangala Get boxes are something quite new that they're starting to utilise, and they are to provide Wi-Fi either for individual tenants in their homes or in the communal areas or similar. And they are currently looking into if it is practical or even possible for them to create a shared device loan, because they are spread out all over Wales. There's practicality issues in that as well. So that is something they're looking into at this moment. So I know some people like statistics, so I thought I would add a little slide of statistics in here. So the year 24-25 was actually the first full year of embedment. Up until that point, it was a pilot. So here's some statistics from that first full year. So there were 28 on-demand sessions, there were 80 live events and 45 courses in that year. So that was a total of 153 different events that people could attend. Sorry, excuse me. There were 59 new tenants registered. The highest attended session was a mindfulness session that had 28 people attending it. And the most completed course, or the course that's been done the most, is that Tenancy Ready course I mentioned at the beginning. And they've had 61 people complete that in the last year. So there are currently 310 tenants registered on it, and that grows every day. There are 42 staff registered to use it as members of staff, so they can provide courses or events on there. And then there are 19 landlords. So those staff are from 19 landlords. Their future plan, they are currently working towards a 2025-26 action plan. And their main priorities in this time is increase the marketing side of Air Cymru for not just for the tenants, but for new landlords to join as well. And to use the shared budget to pay for an external session that, and you know, it just wouldn't have been feasible to do it individually because they were too expensive. So if you did want more information, or if you wanted to join Air Cymru, if you are a landlord, so these 5 staff members are the core members of the Air Cymru team. I can share contact details after, so that would be Scott Tandy at Newydd Housing, Laurie Evans at Grŵp Cynefin, Vicky Shenton at Denbighshire County Council, Michelle McGregor from Hafod, and Lisa Roberts from Trefalis. We have recently filmed this case study on Air Cymru, and I was really hoping it would have come back today, so I didn't have to do this and I could just play that for you. But unfortunately, it had not. So if that comes back before Sarah sends the minutes out, then I will make sure that that link is included. But if there's any questions, I am happy to try and answer them. I can't promise to be able to, because none of the actual landlords are here today, I don't think, to be able to support me with the questions.
Lon, thank you very much indeed. What a brilliant thing. That's not great. Really good to hear about that. We've got probably a couple of, but we've got quite pushed for time, but a couple of minutes. If anyone's got any quick questions for Lon, I'm sure she'd be happy to do her best to answer them. Could I just ask a question? So what percentage of people in social housing do you think are covered by the organisations that are already members? Is it kind of like half? Is it only a little bit, or is it a big chunk of social tenants, do you think?
I would think it's probably up to about 60-70%. You know, that there is quite a big chunk that most of the members that are there, or not most, a lot of the members out there do have a vast amount of houses. So there is a good chance that there's a high number, but I don't know the figure particularly, but it's a high number, I would think.
So hopefully if there is anyone on the call today who's in a social housing organisation and who isn't a member, you might want to consider it because it looks really good. And then my second question was, is it run by, is it a commercial platform, in fact? Are they paying into a commercial company to run this?
No, they're all funding it themselves. So every landlord, the first year they put in £500, and then every year after that it's £250 per year, and that is enough to run the website. Enough to run the website, as well as then organise some joint paid for sessions, because most of the landlords already run sessions with their tenants anyway. So that's all they're doing, is opening up their sessions for others to join.
But who actually runs the platform?
Well, to be honest, I'm not sure. Newydd Housing have the most kind of input to the platform itself, and I think Ashley built it. So
no, I was just struck. It's got a .co.uk domain, and I kind of expected it to have a .wales domain or a .cymru domain.
Yeah, so, I think it was because it was an Air Cymru. It would have been like an aircymru.cymru, which felt a bit,
New York. So good, they named it twice. And are there any quick questions for Lon? If not, I'm sure you're obviously on email, Lon. We'll put your email address, if we could, in the chat, and then people can contact you, or Scott, as you say, who's a diligent attendee but is away on holiday today. Would be happy to have it. But what a fantastic initiative, and the power of people coming together, and as you say, using the not £250 a year is not great resource, is it, to deliver all of that activity? Fantastic. Thank you. So in that case, what we'll do is we'll move now into our breakout session. So what we're going to do here between now and 1:45 is just we're going to try and make sure we have a reasonable mix of people from different sectors, if that's been possible, from who's attended. And we're really interested in knowing how well your sector, the sector you are in, is embedding digital inclusion. So bearing in mind, this is priority one, embed digital inclusion across all sectors. So we want to hear a bit of on-the-ground feedback about that. Is your organisation, so is your sector doing it, and is your organisation doing it? And how can we raise awareness with organisations and sectors of the impact of digital inclusion on the wellbeing goals for Wales? Wales is, I think, still unique in having the legislation such as the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. I know governments from all around the world come to see it, as it were. It's a great thing in concept. So do people understand its importance? And then just a very final thing, could you tell us if you're part of a public service board, or if you're contributing to a public service board in Wales? And if you do, does digital inclusion ever get discussed? So you can give us a bit of intelligence of what's actually happening on the room. So, Sarah, was there anything else we wanted people to cover in those groups, or have I done it?
No, I think that's good. Yeah, feel free to discuss.
Excellent. So Is your sector working to embed digital inclusion? Is your organisation working to embed digital inclusion? Presumably, yes. How can you raise awareness? How can we raise awareness with organisation sectors of the importance of digital inclusion on the wellbeing goals for Wales? And if you're part of a public service board, tell us that, and tell us if they ever talk about digital inclusion. And if not, how can we change that? Fantastic. So Sarah's going to press the magic button and we're all going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And then we'll come back.
About 1:45.
Yeah, back at 1:45. Thanks. Excellent. Hope you all had a useful discussion, and we'll have gained a bit more information about that will help us in some of our discussions. So thank you very much indeed for that. We'll obviously capture that as best we can and put that information to good use. But really great to hear some of the things going on in different sectors, and also very nice to see such a nice representation across sectors in the Alliance as well. And I think that's one of its richnesses. One of the things that's rich about it. And I do hope you will have thought in your groups or in the bigger group whether there are connections you can be making across the network that would be useful to you. And I was struck, for example, listening to Mandy talking about the role for children and young people, and a web platform as a way of engaging children and young people around digital or other things that they have or they have access to. That might be very useful to other people wanting to find a way of engaging with young people about digital. So that's a connection people might want to make, and there will be many others. So, Sarah, are you back?
I am.
You are back.
Sorry.
That's good, because I couldn't
Unable
see you.
to find my mute button, but here. Yes, so now we've come to the time when we do our live survey in the meeting around our priority area, priority 1 this week. So I've put a link in the chat. I'd really appreciate it if you could click on the link now, and we'll give you a few minutes. I always find that we get a much better response rate if I sit in awkward silence and get you guys to do it while we're here. So if you could click on the link and start filling it out, that would be great. I should say that again, these surveys are for our Exploring Impact reports. The report from the last meeting is up on our website, but I'll include it in the follow-up email to this meeting. And then when this one's done, I will send it out as well.
Excellent. So we'll give people just perhaps 1 more minute to do that. People are thinking carefully about their answers, which is great. It is really helpful to have some data to work out what impact we're having, and more importantly, what else we need to be focusing on.
It has been the last report was the first time we've done a second one. So we'd come around all the way around the priorities. So I've done priority 4 twice now. So I was able to sort of compare some of the data, and because I ask the same questions each time. So the more we can build up that kind of information over time, the more we can see whether we're doing the right things and whether there are any gaps we need to look at.
Okay, so let's assume people have had, and if you haven't finished it yet, you can of course carry on finishing it after the end of the meeting. Just don't log out. That's the only thing I would say. Stay in it. Thank you so much to everybody. Thank you to Sarah for organising today's meeting with her usual brilliance, and for what has been, I think, a really interesting meeting. Great to hear from the Future Generations Commissioner. We should be very proud, I think, in Wales that we've got the Future Generations Act, or the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. And certainly when I was working in the health board, we did feel a responsibility to be considering the well-being of the next generation. Whether we delivered that's a different matter, but we certainly did take it very seriously. And so it's really important, and it's great that we now have a measure around digital inclusion, because it is something that is very much owned at government level, and we will Joe kindly posted something in the chat about what's happening about that measure and how it be measured. But having the MDLS will give Welsh Government an opportunity, I think, to have a kind of meaningful measure of it, which would be great. And thanks to Lon for her presentation about Cymru. I think that's just fantastic. I didn't know about that. That's really, really great. If you're, as I say, if you're not, if you could be a member and you're not yet, then I would encourage you to sign up. And there are various other things in the chat. Grateful to Mandy, who's put the 6 goals in there as well. I expect you knew them, but if you didn't, that's where they are. And Derek's report, which it is definitely worth reading carefully, because I think that's useful to know where we are as a nation. So we're very conscious in the Alliance. Our original agenda, of which this priority 1 was part, was written ahead of some Senedd elections. And we probably left it a little bit late in the day to get it published. So we were hoping to influence parties' manifestos ahead of those Senedd elections, which was 2 ago. I think they came out a bit late in the day. So we're thinking about whether we should be doing some form of targeted activity around the forthcoming elections, and definitely it seems that we will have to make sure we cover lots of parties in that, because it sounds like anything could happen. So if you've got any thoughts about that, or things that you think are the kind of burning issues that we should be raising with the politicians as they start to shape their manifestos ahead of next May, then do let us know. We will definitely organise the next meeting of the network, which is the essence of the Alliance, before the end of September. So Sarah's going to get a date sorted out for that, which, as I say, will give an opportunity to look back at the work we've done in its current form, the Alliance, and then hopefully to be clear what the future holds for either this Alliance or an Alliance. We think that Digital Inclusion Alliance Wales is a really valuable asset for whoever is successful in securing the next contract for delivering digital inclusion support in Wales from the government. And obviously there could be a number of organisations who bid for that. If you like, the concept of the Alliance is really important, but actually its value is in its members. And so all of you are the valuable asset, and so we look forward to hearing from organisations that are tendering to secure our partnership and support as part of their tender, because I think, as Derek rightly pointed out, when he was in Wales Co-op, there were 20-something members, something like that. Now we've got 120-something members, and it's a really powerful force for good in digital inclusion in Wales, and that's down to all the fantastic work you all do. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for your attendance this afternoon, and I think we can conclude, unless there's anything else I need to say, Sarah.
No, that's it.
Oh, someone just popped something in the chat. Let me quickly to see what that is before we close off. Lovely, yes, and it was lovely to see all of you too. So thanks very much indeed, and see you again in September.